Hey everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Veil. Cullen Smith here. So I want to cover just briefly this short video that I just woke up to and saw this morning. So I need to revise my intro to this video because it ended up being a lot more heavy and more dense, a lot more informationally dense than I had originally intended. It became a lot longer than I had intended. So basically a summary is this is going to include everything that I'm seeing, as well as my entire worldview, my entire philosophy, a lot of the etymology, this esoteric symbolism, everything I see going on in the world around us, from the technology sector to the private sector to the industry to the economy to global vaccinations for the pandemics and for all sorts of things that are going on, the statistics, the numbers, from qualified professionals, the actual scientific research, so many different aspects of reality that need to be fully disclosed and fully understood. So it's going to go deep, and it will be a several-part video series. So Dr. Tiesto opens up by calling upon Lady Gaga to be the spokesperson for the World Health Organization and this global concert that they're organizing. Again, an equivalent of the Live Aid concert for the HIV AIDS virus back in the 80s and early 90s. In no way a comparison to what is going on with COVID, which is the equivalent of just a couple tens of thousands of deaths, which is less than the typical flu. And let me clarify here for further clarification that this is after adjustment for the corrections of the errors, of the statistical data errors being made by inconclusive death certificates and mislabeling of cause of death. So the experts, John Ioannidis and other epidemiologists, are referring to the correction after you correct for the statistics and the data, whereas, say there's a lot more because of the false testing and the false positives and the false negatives and the every unreliable data that we're using to project all of our models.
I want to be clear for our audience, sir. You've got a governor of a state that is making executive orders, stay-at-home orders, that right now is cratering your economy. We don't know what data is being used, and yet you as a state senator, as a doctor, have not seen that data that's being used for our governor to make these decisions.
No, we have not. And
does that not concern you? I mean, shouldn't the people of Minnesota be screaming right now?
Well, I think, Minnesota nice. We want to be good soldiers in that, but I think that people are starting to say, hold it now. We need to have a deeper understanding of this, and we're not getting it. I think that, in Minnesota, as a physician, I received an email last week from the Department of Health coaching me on how to fill out death certificates. And I've never really received coaching from the Vital Statistics Agency in terms of how to do a death certificate. But basically, I felt like they were saying, you don't have to have a confirmed laboratory test for COVID-19 in order to make the death certificate be COVID-19. So
wait. Sir, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that and what you just said, I think is critically important. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Well, last Friday, I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for 19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son, who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate. Now, we've not done that. If someone has the pneumonia and it's in the middle of a flu epidemic, and I don't have a test on influenza, I don't diagnose influenza on the death certificate. I will say this elderly patient died of pneumonia.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but my heart is sinking right now as you're telling me this. You're a doctor. Why in the world would they be sending you out information to fill out death certificates, whether the person's been diagnosed with COVID or not, but then to say in the death certificate this person's death was caused by that does not sound right to me.
I went to the person in our office who does most of the death certificates over the last 10, 20 years, and I said, does this sound right? I had her look at the documents that I printed off, and She said, well, we've always been told that you always put down just facts. You don't put down any probabilities. You don't put any presumptions down. It's just what you know. And so this is concerning. And it actually gets to your point, Chris. When we start talking about the data that goes into the modeling, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we being forthright? Are we sharing with the public what's going into your modeling?
So with that being said, why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID?
Fear is a great way to control people. And I worry about that. I worry that sometimes we're so darn interested in just jazzing up the fear factor that, sometimes people's ability to think for themselves is paralyzed if they're frightened enough. And that's not where I want people to be. I want people to say, we're going to get through this. I'm going to use my head. I'm going to go to different sources. I'm going to listen to different sources. And I'm going to think for myself, because that's what America's about.
Senator, if you don't mind, after this interview, if you can send me that 7-page document, and just for clarity, you were sent a 7-page document by who again?
The Department of Health.
Department of Health, saying, hey, fill this out, whether they test positive. That is stunning, sir. So,
and this is coming from the world's leading science experts, literally the highest qualified expert in the entire world, Dr. John Ioannidis, as well as many others, Dr. Paul Offit, and many other of the CDC, many other world's leading experts, including Dr. Fauci, who also quietly agrees with all of these, has changed his numbers, but they're not saying this on the mainstream news, even though Dr. Fauci also agrees with Dr. John Ioannidis and these numbers that are dramatically lower than the initial predictions of millions of deaths. Is now they've all adjusted their numbers back down to roughly around 20,000 is what it's predicted at now. So,
Dr. Annie is a council member and fellow of the American College of Physicians, Montana chapter, and in 2019 won the ACP Laureate Award for commitment to excellence in medical care. She is a member of the Montana Medical Association Legislative Committee.
The decision for unprecedented government-mandated lockdowns has been based on the alleged death rate of COVID. Is this death rate based on truth? Inquiring minds want to know, are the reported deaths from COVID-19 truly deaths from COVID-19? To address this question, we need to discuss death certificates, since death certificates are the basic source of information about mortality. The discussion of death certificates is not a fun one. We have all grieved so many losses in our lifetimes. Still, we need to talk about it because they are the basis of the so-called death rate of COVID-19. History-changing decisions are being made due to these figures, despite the fact that they are flat out wrong, based on data that is insufficient and often inaccurate. Few people know how much individual power and leeway is given to the physician, coroner, or medical examiner signing the death certificate. How do I know this? I've been filling out death certificates for over 30 years. More often than we want to admit, we don't know with certainty the cause of death when we fill out death certificates. That is just life. We are doctors, not God. Autopsies are rarely performed, and even when an autopsy is done, the actual cause of death is not always clear. Physicians make their best guesstimate and fill out the form. Then that listed cause of death, whatever we list, is entered into a vital records data bank to use for statistical analysis, which then gives out inaccurate numbers, as you can imagine. Those inaccurate numbers then become accepted as factual information, even though much of it is false.
Even Dr. Fauci and all of these pundits on the news they're not saying this in public, but yet simultaneously in their papers, they're publishing it with this scientific consensus, which is that these are several thousands of deaths, tens of thousands at the most, roughly projected around probably less than a typical seasonal flu. Although, of course, COVID-19, the symptoms are a lot more severe, especially due to lack of immunity, lack of antigens and antibodies developed to this new strain. So, of course, but all of these numbers are, everyone's readjusting, and the numbers are being brought down from the way overblown, dramatic, fear porn, scare tactic numbers in the millions that were projected. And of course, it's reasonable to assume that, yes, we gotta be safe, and that could have, been a possibility given the bird flu, the chicken avian flu pandemic of 1918, which we now know forensic investigation was a chicken flu, a bird flu, avian flu, which comes from factory farmed chickens, or just typical farmed chickens, but it comes from domesticated ducks, domesticated chickens, and that's what spreads the bird flu, and that's what the 1918 pandemic was.
Humanity's greatest killer was bird flu. First civilian casualty in the U.S. was September 11th, ironically, 1918.
So I'm going off track here, but let's get back to what Dr. Tiesto has introduced Lady Gaga as the organization for this new, basically a repackaging of the Live Aid.
WHO has been working with Global Citizen for several weeks on the Together at Home concert series, with artists like Chris Martin and John Legend giving free online performances. Now we're working with Lady Gaga and Global Citizen to take this concept and make it even bigger through the One World Together at Home virtual global special on this very special event, One World.
Dr. Tedros, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's listening and watching. I would like to thank the World Health Organization and the United Nations, as well as Global Citizen. Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros and Hugh Evans. And thank you very much to the World Health Organization for asking me to collaborate with you on this special.
So thank you to the World Health Organization for approaching Lady Gaga and saying, hey, Lady Gaga, you are our go-to leader of basically the population of the world. We need to call upon you to engage and activate your services to us, because we need to raise money for the World Health Organization, which is its second leading primary funder is Bill Gates, mind you, Bill Gates, who is funding basically all the world's leading projects involved in both planning for these pandemics as well as providing the vaccinations for these pandemics.
Kind of in uncharted territory about how we minimize the pain. Even the issue of once you get the case numbers down, there's a lot of dialogue between our foundation experts and the government now, but what does opening up look like? Which activities like schools, have such benefit and can be done in a way that the risk of transmission is very low.
Yeah.
And which activities like mass gatherings may be, in a certain sense, more optional. And so until you're widely vaccinated, those may not come back at all. He
is the money man behind, and basically the global policy leader behind World Health. He is the main funder of the World Health Organization, second to the United States, which has surprisingly, I'm not too sure about this, but surprisingly, I believe Trump has made moves to attempt to cut funding from the World Health Organization, which I don't know how true that is or not, but so again, it's interesting. Bill Gates, second funder of the World Health Organization, and so again, they're holding a global concert to raise money for the World Health Organization. So they need funding. They need your money, and the world is being shut down right now because of the CDC and the United States government and each government of these independent countries, and essentially under the guidelines and the mandates of the World Health Organization. Even though the world's leading scientists, literally the world's most qualified, heavily credentialed scientists, such as Dr. John Ioannidis, Dr. Paul Offit, and many of these other doctors are all coming out and saying that these measures of the lockdown is completely unwarranted, and not only that, it's extremely dangerous and harmful in many different ways. The global economy is being shut down. So just like the virus takes out only the weakest, so too does this programmed response, this fear-based programming response to shut down the world also will starve out all the small businesses and all the common businesses, the small business owners. All right, everyone. So this video ended up becoming a lot more elaborate and a lot longer than I had originally intended or thought it would be. As always, it ended up becoming basically a full film presentation with lots of different documentary style information in it as it goes further and further and deeper and deeper and deeper down the esoteric symbolic rabbit hole. So I've ended up deciding to cut this video right here at this point. I think this is probably the best point where I can actually cut it without leaving you too confused and cutting the thread and the web of connections too hard. So I decided to cut the film right here, and we will split this up into basically I'll try to keep it into 15-minute segments that are bite-sized segments that you can actually absorb and fully digest before diving deeper and deeper and deeper as we go into more in-depth information as this film goes along. So stay tuned for the next part. We'll pick up right here where we left off. You can watch it. I will leave any intros and stuff out so that you can watch it in a consecutive style as the videos go along. But so we will cut this right here, and for more full information. And so again, my name is Cullen Smith. This is Lifting the Veil. You can find all of my full books, presentations, videos, films, articles, posts at patreon.com/liftingtheveil. And there is also a ton of exclusive content, and I will leave the cited reference links in the description down below. So you can check that out for all of my full content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe. Please help me reach more people by sharing these videos around on the internet, because I rely solely on word of mouth, and the recommended algorithms are not recommending any of my videos or films anymore. My channel has literally been completely restricted, so I rely on your help, and I need your help. So please help support this channel by sharing my work around if you appreciate it, and make sure to subscribe if you're not a subscriber already, and leave me your comments. I definitely want to know what you have to share and what you have to think about all of this stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Y'all stay safe and take care of yourselves, and I will see you later.